From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent? The man who lifts condominiums off his chest. Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello everybody, James here, and it's Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. A couple of things to note beforehand. One, yes, I do have a new camera angle. This will be a feature going forward. Two, I have things to sell. Don Muraco, I'm not selling Don Muraco. Books behind me, you know what the drill is. And three, Don's webcam wasn't working, so he's on the old webcam today. So it's on you, Don. Hello.
Hello, in the dark here, kind of.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll suffer. I think we were trying for 20 minutes to get the new webcam working. I don't know why it wasn't.
Yeah. I haven't got my grandson down here to help me.
Oh, dearie me. Today we're going to be
better,
doing
right?
WrestleMania 2, but I thought we'd kick off with a bit of news first, and one of the main bits of news, and I actually checked this just after I woke up, is Steve Austin, who was once rumoured to be wrestling on the show at age 57. This is WrestleMania 38 coming up. He's now not wrestling, and he's just going to be in a probably physical segment with Kevin Owens. Did you ever meet Steve Austin on any of your Hall of Fame?
Just a couple of heads, just hello, goodbye things.
Yeah.
He seemed like a real nice guy. He was very, he was, endearing. He was. I met him once earlier in their run. I think one of the Hall of Fame things I attended, and he was a little more. And then I saw him again at a was it an autograph or another different double. I think it was a different WWE event. Several years later, when he wasn't active, and he seemed like he was aloof, not from us, but from the company guys or the work. I didn't know. It wasn't. He was real nice both times. He was real cool to me.
Could you think of anybody? Because as I say, Steve Austin, he may have even been. He still would have been 57 if he had have wrestled. Can you think of anybody in their late 50s, early 60s from your era who was still wrestling full time and still wrestling at a very high level?
God. I'm sure there's probably somebody. Poffle's father. He went a long time. Flair comes to mind first of all, naturally, because he refuses to die. But God, there's a lot of guys. 57 is kind of pushing it. God, Kiniski just looked old. he probably looked old when he was like 20 and he was 16. Kiniski, he was a horrible body, ugly, but that guy could go all day and all night long, just chop and do it. He had the NWA before Dory Jr. What a fabulous worker he was.
I'm trying to think like modern times. I mean, there's quite a lot of Mexican wrestlers who keep getting in the ring as well, and a couple of Japanese. But
El Santo was
yeah.
He used to come to San Antonio, a few of those border towns.
What age would he have been at the time? I mean, I can look it up while you.
I don't know. He had his mask on all the time. Or Angelo Mosca, he's 5'6" of socks. I guess he used to put on like 8 pairs of socks. I don't know. Wow. He was a movie star, a Mexican movie star, and they kind of kept him. He didn't, really mingle.
Yeah, he was at 66 when he died, and I'm pretty sure he was wrestling up to almost that age. I remember the story.
Oh, yeah.
He went on some Mexican TV show and unmasked. He just almost spontaneously just unmasked and said, "Here's my face." And then 2 weeks later, he dropped. So, don't know what's going. It is on YouTube though, if you want to see the unmasking of El Santo. Finally,
El Santo.
Yeah. I will move on to one other thing. WWE Hall of Fame news is both The Undertaker and Vader have been announced. Vader was announced yesterday as we record this.
Yeah.
With, I'm sure you must have met Undertaker once or twice. Did you ever meet Vader in Japan?
Yeah, he was a nice guy too. He probably had the best run of any one of the boys, maybe, with the exception of, and he had the longest run. I don't know what he's worth now, but between Rock, Stone Cold, and him, gosh, they were he's 20-something years WrestleMania headliner. I mean, that's he's got creds up to yin yang, and to hold on to that spot and stay like that for all those seasons.
Yeah, he somehow over the course of 20 years, it started becoming like a heritage act.
20 plus years, yeah.
Oh well, I suppose.
And he kept he was like Cena, He kept and The Rock too. They're all in good standings with Vince. They never knew. They probably didn't realize they're going to be fabulously wealthy, But like Cena or The Rock, of course.
Yeah. With Vader, I was trying to think. Did you ever meet him in All Japan or when you were over?
Atlanta. I met him at a Hall of Fame thing or a Legends induction, some kind of induction. I was down there. Whoa, he worked with Davey Boy that night. He's a good worker. Good for did a lot of stuff for a big guy. He's impressive. Not as tall, maybe 6'3", 6'4", but he was really thick.
It's tall enough, isn't it? 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah. Well, you get into 6'8", 7 foot guys. John Studd and some of the other guys.
With the Hall of Fame, was your induction like a big deal to you? I think it was in 2004. Was it a big deal to you personally, or was it sort of more like Paul Orndorff, where he just turned up, took the booking, and then he got a plaque that he left in the hotel room afterwards?
No, it was a big deal to me because all the guys. I really respected the guy. I was a goofball. I used to leave and disappear, to come back here and surf and stuff. But it's just all the guys that did it, put in time, just from when I first broke in, got Bud Rattel, Dean Ho, and even the wrestlers I knew before I got into the business, from down at Dean Higuchi's gym, Dean Ho's gym, and Lord Blear's, just that whole thing. So whether it's worthy or not, it meant a lot to me to just because of all the other, and my my speech was a shit because I was trying to include so many guys that had taken had their hand in my life, that I'd been we always talk about best matches, the best tag teams, and greatest tag. When you decide that, of course you're talking about professional wrestling, something that's scripted, something that's planned, and everything. So you go your individual territories. Maybe you had some tags that weren't the Bockwinkel Stevens, Pat Patterson Stevens, like the guys in South, like Ricky Morton and Gibson and Tommy Rogers, and like Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, and how that babyface, all that coordination with we used to have Roy Shires, used to make you plan, lay out. If you had a tag team, 2 or 3, 4, you'd have to lay out like 5 or 6 high spots before, and that coordinated movement that like some of those good tag teams have, or like Morton and those the way they move like that. But you got to realize that everything's scripted. So when the comeback or the peak or the finisher reaches that crescendo, it just all the territories. Like your favorite wrestler might have been something that it couldn't even work. Just a stumble bump, but just because the program had been created, it'd be done so well, and the other individuals and everybody together, it all fell together, and the TV, and it worked for you, whether you're in Alabama or you're in New York City or Florida or Hawaii, it worked for you, and the pop was just as big for you where you were that night as it is for anybody else around the country, around the world. So it's kind of relative thinking when you think, well, these guys, that was the best. these were the best tag teams. And these were like Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat. There was a great match. But before that match, there had been title matches. There had been our Broadways. There had been babyface, been all kinds of matches where you'd have, 5, 6, 7, 8 false finishes, just calling Dory Funk Jr. and Briscoe, other guys. I myself and had that whole, where you go small package, sunset flip, catch cross, just keep 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But that's they weren't the first ones, and certainly not the last. But it depends, what market you're in, and what you're accustomed to. So you go to someplace, it's kind of and you can think that, work wise, like Stevens and Pat, they're just a fabulous, and other ones. But then you look at great teams like the Crush and the Bruiser. They did nothing. All they did was stand there and beat guys up. They come in, grab, they just ragdoll Bockwinkel and those guys all over the ring. And they're great workers like that. And they, they just did what they had to do, and the people loved it. That's that's the wonder of professional wrestling. It's just that who's the greatest, who's the best.
Did you find then with your Hall of Fame speech that you basically had like a list of about 600 people you wanted to thank?
Yeah, I blew that. I just couldn't, from the guy, from, like I said, from pre-Vancouver, British Columbia, back to Dean's gym, Luther Lindsay and Dean and Carl and all those guys, Loose Shoulders Movement, Beauregard, some of the Ricky Hunter that just passed Ricky Hunter.
I think it was Ricky Hunter who's the gladiator, wasn't he?
Yeah. And he would, all those guys he's hanging around the gym, Billy White Wolf, Adnan, and all those guys. It was, before I even got it, and then the people that when I first broke in, the guys at Bud Rattel and Jim Gillies, guys never heard of, never known about, but are instrumental, and on through Hawaii and Minneapolis. So it's really a graduated circumstance.
I like how it sort of sounds like you have to just it almost runs like a list of credits that you have to just run through, and then my 15 minutes is up. Right, thank you everybody. And before I forget, did you get a ring eventually? Did they send you a ring?
Yeah, I have it in the drawer somewhere.
All right,
I don't wear rings. I don't wear watches because I carpal tunnel.
Yeah, I've got one like metal clasp watch, and it's fine when it goes on, and then it must be made out of that stuff that makes your skin turn green, because my wrist swells over 5 minutes, and then it's nice and loose and then 5 minutes later, I'm taking it off. My wrist is swollen and turned purple.
I got a gold Rolex I got on the road, and then my wife got me I don't wear rings. My first wedding ring I lost, but she got me another Rolex, but it was a Steve McQueen Submariner, and nobody knew. I guess it was $800,000 at the time. We got married years and years and years ago. But I guess it's one of those collector models now, where you look at Steve McQueen Submariner. It's a collector's item. I never knew that when we were getting it. It just turned out that way.
Yeah, no.
I can't wear.
I'm trying to think. The missus' dad. She's he's banging to watches as well. He's got quite a few in cases, that he. But the one he wears is a fake out, because it's why?
Yeah.
No one knows the difference, and why'd you risk it?
Sure.
I'm going to move from this horology report. I'm going to move on to the main meat of the podcast now, and it's WrestleMania 2. And this is either going to go at 2 or 3 episodes, depending on how quick or slowly we go through it. But and the sad thing is, we're not even talking about 2/3 of the matches. But I've got so many questions from this. First things first is how far out were you aware that a second WrestleMania was being booked, and how far out date-wise we were aware that it's going to emanate from 3 cities?
Couple months, maybe. I wasn't in the loop at that time. George Scott was doing a lot of the booking at that time, where he had the book at that time. So I guess I was kind of being phased out, because Snuka had left or disappeared, and I think rehab or something. But Snuka was gone, so I guess they didn't want me around, or didn't, until Ricky Steamboat came in. They figured I could get him over real well, and we ended up doing well, and with like that B team they used to call it, and going everywhere and doing great business. So, but I wasn't really in the loop. Dr. Piper was going on. I wasn't no longer a favorite son. I think Orndorff was just still a babyface, right?
Yeah, I think he'd done his first shortly after his first turn. We'll talk about the Paul Orndorff match in a little bit, though. But
okay,
why did you? Sorry, why did you? When did you figure out this 3-city thing? And did you realize at the time what a monumental technological task that was going to be?
I never realized. I never figured anything out. It was just, it was just kind of told what was going on, and I guess he had to start programming it way ahead of time, or planning it, because they put something like that together takes all kinds of planning and stuff. So I don't, like I said, I wasn't really in the loop yet. It was kind of everybody was transitioning and new talent was coming in and out. It was kind of weird.
Well, I'll fill in a couple of blanks then. So there was one person on Earth who thought this was a good idea, and it was Vince McMahon. Even Dick Ebersol thought it was just stupid and pointless. And I imagine, that the reason WrestleMania 2 emanated from 3 cities was because Starrcade the previous year, which is only a few months before WrestleMania 2, emanated from 2 cities, Greensboro and also from the Omni. So I think it's just one of those things where Vince decided to put a huge amount of money in just to one-up Jim Crockett, which sounds about right in my estimation.
Yeah, it did make sense, yeah.
Moving on then, WrestleMania 1 you weren't on. WrestleMania 3 is obviously WrestleMania 3 from the Silverdome, isn't it? I always get Silverdome and Superdome confused.
Silverdome.
Yeah, so enormous happening. But did WrestleMania 2 feel special at all? Because it's just, as far as I can tell, just the same arena you worked loads of times before in front of
kind of
fans.
Yeah, it was. It was starting. It was starting to get momentum, and starting to grow, turn into something. It was. It kind of turned from mainstream. MTV was just. Not just coming on the scene, but had been on the scene for a little while, and then Vince had hooked up with them, and then they were before all the other music stations and stuff. Just before any of the others had started, and there was it made a big difference. David Wolf and those people there, and it was somehow it clicked. Cyndi Lauper naturally, so all that stuff clicked.
Did you get any time off afterwards? Because I can only find because this was April the 1st, I believe. Did you get any time off? Because the next event I can find out is an Australia tour on the 10th or 11th, I think.
God, I can't remember, and I don't have any books that I kept. Was that the Jake the Snake in the toilet thing?
I don't know how many times he went to the toilet, but
yeah, was that with the first tour? Was I on that tour?
Yeah, you were on that tour.
That was the only one I went. That was the only one I went with Vince for.
Yeah,
I've been there, several other times.
Yeah, there was like 4. There was like 4 in 1986 alone to Australia. Yeah, so I think you were on a couple at least. That's something I'll confirm at a later date. Sure. Yeah. Also, WrestleMania 2, I think it's a bit misnomer. It's sometimes called the first one on pay-per-view. WrestleMania 1, there was small pockets of pay-per-view available. That was mostly closed circuit. The Wrestling Classic, which I know you have no memory of, was almost a test event on pay-per-view. That tournament that wasn't very good. And then they're basically migrating away from closed circuit to pay-per-view. Closed circuit. Are they still doing that in America for certain things? Because we actually get closed circuits or basically like a simulcast in cinemas for certain boxing events over here still.
I don't know. Well, I guess I think you can watch some of the local university football games, but I don't know if they still have that. I mean, you can get everything's on TV. Everything's on the you go streaming live. Everything's streaming live now. Streaming live.
The pub.
All the UFC has their own channel on ESPN, and
I'm really gutted, right? So the pub at the end of my road has just shut down, and that was the pub. I mean, it was an absolute shithole. But they had a hooky pay-per-view connection, so you could get all the So if you wanted to see the boxing, you just walked over there, bought one drink, sat there, and didn't have to pay anything. It was great. Probably why they shut down.
Yeah, that was old days.
The old days. It was 2 weeks ago. They just shut down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm really gutted.
God damn, my ass is killing me.
Oh dear. Let me think if there's anything else. WrestleMania 2 once again with pay-per-view, and obviously pay-per-view and these closed circuit massive events, very very new. What were the payoffs like for them, and also did you have to wait 3 months for the pay-per-view checks to come through?
I remember we waited a good bit. There's, with Lou and some of those guys around. They're always those guys are always talking about something. If they got around the TV or where all the managers were in, or Lou would let everybody know what was going on. So there's no problem not being riled up about the length of the checks. I guess it had to clear, with all the cable companies, the TV, all those things that it wasn't automatic, pretty much like it is now. Every computer system. How things have changed in what is it, 30 years, 40 years?
We're talking 36 years.
Right? 36?
Yeah, 36 years, yeah.
Is WrestleMania 36 coming up?
No, sorry, WrestleMania 38 is coming up, but it was WrestleMania 2 was 36 years ago.
Yeah.
Did you ever complain to Vince about, where's my money for these pay, because you didn't understand that it would take several months to clear?
No, we were running, man. We were going there. You didn't have time to complain. God. I mean, we were running. I mean, we were just going airport to arena daily, like no sleep. It was like your life, man. Just on the road all the time. So there wasn't, it started like they kind of put you on like a salary, and you could see your weekly average after a while. It would break down when you'd have, and then as you slid down in the card, that it would, and you'd have things to balance it out. But they kind of, at the office, they put you on a, in those, after when Vince Sr. was gone, that whole Phil Zacco thing changed over. Then and it became it kind of, wasn't a stated salary, but, kind of an imaginary salary type of situation.
Yeah. One more thing is, was there extra catering or were there banners put up in the back to make Nassau Coliseum look prettier than it was? A lot of celebrities are turning up. We've got to make a good impression.
No, not at that time. The first catering I remember was at the very first Survivor Series in Cleveland. And it was a Thanksgiving Day. And a lot of guys had their family on the road. I had my family on the road. And then Vince had a big cafeteria with, the traditional American turkey and pumpkin pie and all that stuff. Roast beef, prime rib. Well, it was a hell of a spread. I don't remember exactly what it was. But, it was mostly more of the thought, the gesture than the meal. It was eating pretty good. A lot of money to go to dinner.
You bring up something then that I didn't think to ask, but obviously there was no like fan fest before WrestleMania 2. That would come like WrestleMania 10
nothing.
or maybe a bit earlier. But at this time, was Vince encouraging families to come visit for the biggest show of the year, or was it just
No, just a personal choice. Guys are on the road, so much. Another day, and Thanksgiving is kind of a big holiday over here. So I just had my two kids and my wife. My oldest daughter was in California, so that's wasn't a big move. But just a couple days in a hotel, and that was it. My son was a baby. My daughter was.
So he had no choice.
Yeah.
I will move on then. So we're going for it. Nassau Coliseum, Long Island, New York. 16,585 paid or attending. I didn't get paid. That's the only sellout of the three arenas. I thought that was particularly interesting. Do you think this was just because every arena was only getting 1 hour of actual live wrestling?
New York had New York was a big market, big population. LA wasn't over that. LA wasn't doing that great yet. And Chicago hadn't popped either. There was still a war going on with AWA, and NWA was in there, Road Warriors and those guys, and Vern still had a foothold in there. I think. It wasn't too long after, Hulk had left Minnesota, so it was Vern still has territory going, and NWA was in there. I remember seeing Road Warriors and Flair and stuff like that going down, Dusty and those guys. So yeah, it wasn't. What was the question I'm answering?
No, it's just why why New York was the only arena of the three to sell out.
LA hadn't popped yet. For some reason, LA and LA was kind of iffy. Hulk would do a big card, and if you had a good angle, you do a big house, but it wasn't wasn't those 25,000 seat arena till later that you had on the East Coast, those 20,000 arenas, and it wasn't until later that they started filling them. And then Chicago, like I said, Chicago was war territory. It was all mixed.
I'll bring up Chicago. Obviously, when we get to the Chicago point, I've got my own theory about why it didn't draw very well there. But as far as Nassau Coliseum goes, celebrities in attendance: Ray Charles singing "America the Beautiful," Cab Calloway, who for my own notes here, I've told myself who these people are. So a jazz singer, Daryl Dawkins from the NBA, G. Gordon Liddy from the FBI and the Watergate scandal.
Watergate, yeah.
Yeah. Joan Rivers, who I know, Joe Frazier, who I know, Lou Duva, who was a boxing coach, I believe, Herb, a Burger King guy, apparently some spokesman, Susan St. James, who I think that was Dick Ebersol's wife. All those celebrities, do you remember speaking to any of them?
Well, I remember Joan Rivers you couldn't get near. Not that I wanted to, but yes. she was pretty, it was pretty well, don't go here, it's Joan Rivers. She's that type. No, everybody had their entourage. They kind of, went their own way. Lou Duva, of course, he was training Piper. He was in that boxing thing with Piper and those guys. So he was the only one that I remember meeting, or spending time with.
No, you don't strike me as someone who goes out their way to like glad hand celebrities and get photos with them and stuff.
No, but they never came around. We didn't see, we didn't really see them. Well, we were somewhere, they kept the animals, away from the paying, the real, the elite customers.
Is this why everybody loved, and he's not Bob, I can't remember, the baseball guy who showed up for WrestleMania 3, Bob Uecker. Is that why everybody loved Bob Uecker, because he actually hung around with the guys?
Probably, yeah. He was one of those guys, He was a Bobby Heenan from a different sport. He was clever, funny, self-defacing guy, but he was funny. Nice guy. Talk to him. You know. So is Captain Kirk. What's his name?
William Shatner.
Yeah, William Shatner. He's a pretty good guy.
Oh, I've blown the joke now, but why was Lieutenant Uhuru upset? Because William Shatner.
Oh.
Come on now.
Ah.
Come on now.
Okay.
All right. Lee Majors was apparently meant to be part of this in New York as well, and didn't show up.
$6 million man.
Yeah. Any reason why he didn't show up? Do you know?
No, I have no in with the. Yeah, I have no in with the stars.
No.
The stars that were scheduled.
I imagine you were in gorilla position when Ray Charles was singing. Memorable?
Yeah. Sure. And I liked Ray Charles, man. He's great.
Have you seen the film, Ray? It's a good biopic, that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jamie Foxx.
Foxx.
Right, I'll move on then, and we are going to watch you versus Paul Orndorff. Now, this is almost, dare I say, a bit of a controversial match for reasons that we'll get into as we watch it. But do bear with me, everybody. I'm going to work my magic and set it up for us. So give us a second. There we go. Done it now. Right, so apparently...
I had worked with Paul before. We were working... We'd worked around and we drew just cold when going in. You know, I don't know if I still have the title or what. I remember Cleveland, we do a hell of a house and everything else. I guess it was intimidating to George Skinner, some of the other bookings and stuff going on. So that probably one of the reasons for this match.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to ask. I mean, because this is just basically
Didn't
just a
make
cold
sense, yeah.
match. Yeah, it didn't make any real sense. You didn't have any issues together.
No.
But you know what? I mean, that's the case for several matches on this card. Like, it was originally meant to be Bret Hart versus Ricky Steamboat, and it could have been you or Ricky Steamboat, but it ended up being Ricky Steamboat and Hercules Hernandez for unknown reasons, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I worked with Paul earlier in Cleveland, and you know, I had a couple big shows around the Midwest and stuff, and we did great business, and we cut it off. It was after naturally this Fuji, because it was after me and Jimmy, not obviously.
Apparently this is going to be, I imagine this is going to be cut out of this version, as well as all home video releases, but on the live show itself, Orndorff looks at Fuji and does the slitty eye, pulling his eyes back thing, and then gives him the Italian up yours gesture as well. Susan, Vince McMahon has referenced. So that must be Susan St. James. So it was actually just Vince McMahon as the commentator on his own, with a series of ill-prepared guest commentators on this one.
I had commentators all over for each, obviously, in every venue.
Yeah. Let me have a look. And so I find that interesting that George Scott. So this would have been a George Scott call then to cut.
Half and half. He was in the. He wasn't. I never had any heat. You know, he wasn't a dick or anything. I just, he was. I guess he just. He didn't. He probably just didn't care for me or something. Jimmy was gone. I don't know what their idea was until Steamboat came in and he figured I could get Steamboat over real well. So then I took off another angle with that and kind of rejuvenated my run there. But I'm not sure.
Did you ever hang out with Paul or hit the gym with him?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know if we trained together per se. I trained with Dino Bravo, with Davey. He had his own style. I remember one day we were in some high school or something, and we're getting dressed in a gym. we're not the, in the locker room, and there was a gym right next to, right, adjoining it, part of the locker room. And he was over there, and he started doing squats. And he must have did about 10 sets of squats. And, and he got up to a pretty good sized weight. And then he came, he says, well, God, I don't know. I haven't done legs. I haven't done squats in years. Like, oh my God. And sure enough, he couldn't, after he couldn't walk, he just couldn't walk. After that, he was just, oh my God. But that, we didn't train. He had his, you could tell, Paul was really meticulous about everything. He was.
Well, I was going to ask actually if there were any records broken, or if you knew what he benched or anything like that in the gym. But if you never trained with him, then you may not know.
No. Dino was strong. Atlas, those couple of guys. I guess Bill DeMott was, those guys were animals. A lot of guys. There was a lot of juice going around then too.
There we go, just referencing the match now, and it's already over. That's why I said it was controversial, because it was an opening match between two stars that ends in 4 minutes in a double countout.
Yeah,
So what was the rationale of doing this so quickly?
We're just pulling the curtain for the all the other. I guess they wanted a competitive. I don't know why even keeled match for the first opening card. I don't,
Yeah, the crowd is chanting bullshit. Which, I mean, was that a a common chant in arenas around the world? I mean,
not yet. Yeah. But yeah, your guess is as good as mine. Orndorff was still babyface before he turned on Hulk, and I just hooked up with Fuji not too long. Hadn't been with Fuji too long. By that, a while, but not that. By then, what happened?
No, that's fine. I've just taken the match off.
I thought I'd lose me again.
Yeah, so just going back on that again. So that's 4 minutes 10 seconds that went, and I just find that so strange that two big names, two WWF title contenders, and you just get it over so quickly. I mean, the other matches, I'll tell you what the matches are at the moment. Randy Savage versus George Steele. Yes, you want some time for that. Jake the Snake Roberts versus George Wells, which lasted like 1 minute 30 or something, and then the main event, Roddy Piper, Mr. T, which goes considerably longer. But still, you've got an hour each. It just seems so odd to cut.
Well, they probably wanted. They were obviously saving all the time to fit in that Piper and Mr. T. And if they had anything after, they could run it on the back end. You could bring in a match. So I'm sure they had more matches back in the locker room to bring in. They had a bunch that weren't going on pay-per-view and stuff.
Give us a good.
I guess.
I was going to say, give us a good Paul Orndorff story, because I mean, I know B. Brian Blair tells the story of there was a challenge to see how many groupies he could have relations with in 1 hour backstage at like in between matches once. But did you never hear that one?
Oh, by the time he'd come to God, he'd already come to God, and by then, yeah, he was preaching everything by that time.
What did Paul Orndorff in 84, 85, 86? He was.
Really? Yeah. Already his church, he's building a house. He, kind of made a fatal flaw. He saved all his money, and opened a bowling alley outside of Atlanta. Boom! The guy, his partner. Just fleeced him, and next thing you know, he's training guys in Atlanta. So know how to bowl if you're gonna open a bowling alley.
I know you probably won't remember this show, but it was called Ed. It was in 2000 or something, or in the early 2000s, and it's about a lawyer who goes back home and opens a practice in a bowling alley. Did that one completely pass you by?
Rings a bell, kind of.
Yeah, I love that show. If anyone sees that, Ed, it was a great show anyway. Right then, if there's any other Paul Orndorff stories that you can think of, I mean, did you meet him beforehand in like Florida or Georgia or wherever?
Okay. He came into Lakeland one time when he was having a big run for Watts. And after that, I don't think I met him again till the WWF. And maybe crossed, I don't think we were in any territories or anything together, earlier than the WWF. And he was okay. I traveled with him, but, I got along. He was, he's a mellow guy.
I'm trying to think. So you only really knew him after he found religion and stopped becoming fun?
Well, yeah.
I think
where was this? That must have been in Louisiana or something. He was knocking down the barriers there.
Shame.
I don't know. He wasn't by New York. He was, a different guy.
I will move on.
Come to Jesus.
Come to
Praise
Jesus
the Lord.
meeting. I'll mention once again the other results. Randy Savage defeats George Steele. Jake the Snake Roberts defeats George Wells. That's particularly interesting in a sense because Jake the Snake had only been on TV for like a couple of weeks, and then he's featured on WrestleMania 2 in a dominant performance. Basically, the question is he's brought in, he's already established in other territories, and he's brought in as a main eventer pretty much straight away. Why doesn't this happen anymore? Or rarely does this happen anymore?
Depends what kind of following you have, like Goldberg. Like they bring Goldberg in right on top. Well, now he comes in of the history, but when he first came over, he wasn't established. Some TV's established. I don't know. They just evidently they saw Jake and they liked what they saw, or Vince saw Jake and he liked what he saw. I remember Jake telling me that he was getting a little bit of belly, and Linda had told Vince, that he was losing his Magnum PI look.
Yeah, he was never an Adonis, though. I mean,
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. And the other guy that's, Sam Houston might have been better with arm drags, headlock, get it again, take the tackles. But, Jake was a major. Sam's, was a great worker. But Jake was, a personality. He was a character. He had that snake. Like I said before, he didn't need a title. He didn't need although he could compete for titles and stuff all the time, and bring interest to it. But he had that snake, and Jake the Snake, it just fit. And he came out of Charlotte. I think he had that in Charlotte. Because he had a lady in Charlotte that had a snake, and that's how. And I think he was a babyface there. But Briscoe, I still tell you before, Briscoe said, "Take a look at this guy, and he can talk too." And he was, he was a real deal. So must have known what was happening with him.
Did Briscoe used to give you the heads up of people around? Did Jerry have always have his ear to the ground of the upcoming prospects and stuff?
Not so much in those days, but I'm sure they did. They're into the biz. They're in the biz. Jack was traveling around the country, around the world, wrestling. Different guys that he didn't spend a lot of time with, which is pretty much the nature of the that NWA title at the time. Unless you're in Florida, Florida, Georgia, Texas, down to Louisiana, Watts territory, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and around there. You knew those guys. There was a regular circuit there. All the guys, Buddy Colt and Paul Jones, and Watts, and the guys from Watts and his crew, and those guys in Louisiana and stuff. And of course, Fritz and his sons and those guys in Texas. So it was so probably they were probably had a good eye for talent, a good feel for talent. And Gerald was in. He was in the Tampa office. Oh God, that was the Tango in Tampa. What was that, 78? Yeah, 78. So he'd been in
That
office.
might have been last Tangle in Tampa, wasn't that around 1980? Because that was shortly before you went to the WWF.
78, it's 78, I think.
Okay,
78 or 79.
I may be wrong there.
But he'd been in the office there for years, several years, 2-3 years by that time, and he probably did. He probably had an eye for talent and looking for talent.
Here we go. The NWA, the last Tangle in Tampa, was August 3rd, 1980. I got one right. I can't believe. Because I remember, because you were on that facing Bob Backlund, weren't you?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
because that was short.
So that's when Valentine started. That's when Valentine was in New York. He went. He was before me with Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the only reason I remember that is because you said that's why you ended up getting the job with the WWF and you went there early 81.
No, I was afraid I was going to split his eye with an elbow.
Yeah,
Oh, God. Yeah, I was, oh, no, there goes my job. I said, no chance of getting a job now. But it was, it was kind of both our faults. But I just, I never do that. I never, and it wasn't, anything, no stitches or anything. Just I did cut him in the eyebrow, that. He caught him with the point of an elbow or something.
Well, red equals green. Red equals green, as they say.
Yeah. It eventually did.
I'll move on then. Main event, Nassau Coliseum stretch of WrestleMania 2 is Mr. T with Joe Frazier, the Haiti Kid, and someone identified as Joe Conley. I don't know who that was.
No idea.
He defeats Roddy Piper with Bob Orton and Lou Duva via DQ in one of only 5 matches to ever receive the Wrestling Observer's coveted -5-star rating. Oh,
-5.
Yeah.
I didn't see the minus when you sent me the the outline of the draft.
Do you remember watching this at the time? In fact, actually, before I ask you that, once again, I know we've talked about this maybe once or twice before, but talk about Mr. T and Roddy Piper's relationship. Why did they just not get on together?
I don't know. It was Piper, Piper had a hard on for something. I guess how he was, but I don't understand. He was a big star coming from somewhere. It never happened before, where a movie star or TV star or something had transgressed into the professional wrestling. So it was kind of like the old days, still kayfabe was still alive. I don't know. I know he didn't. It was something that he didn't care, but he never went out and expounded about it, openly to everybody. It wasn't.
How did you deal with celebrities beforehand? Because a lot of the celebrities that were coming were maybe ex-NFL or boxing. Well, you did have some boxing guest referees.
Oh, maybe Joe Walcott or somebody refereeing a match or something like that. But there weren't. We didn't have any. Ex-football players became wrestlers, like Billy Francis and Wahoo, some of those other guys. But no, we didn't have. We weren't. It wasn't the transgender as it might be. Rubbing hands with the celebrities and TV stars and movie stars and stuff like that. It just wasn't. I mean, we were on the road. They were all those movies of that era. The TV, Sir MASH, and all those TV series and stuff that were for nobody's. We didn't see them. We were on the road every night. It's like being a fan of this and we didn't. Nobody took part in that. We were traveling. From 8 to 12, we were. And if it was at home, we weren't. It was like from 6:30 to 12. Other than that, we were on the road from 8 to 12 in the arena, 8 to 10, 8 to 11.
So basically, somebody who you've basically rarely heard of comes in, is treated like a big star, which is probably going to be a cause for some friction. Do you remember how big Mr. T's entourage was?
No, he was. He did have. I think he had. He would come to the locker room when he was traveling with Hulk. earlier on, different shows and stuff, doing walk-ins with Hulk and stuff. He would come in the locker room, and he seemed to be a pretty engaging guy, not, he wasn't talking down, because, Hulk was holding his hand, leading him around and stuff. And he was, he was in a locker room full of, professional wrestlers. These guys are 250, 300 pounds, walking around, but, all alpha males, so he was, he didn't try and rock anybody's world. He was cool.
So
to everybody else but Piper.
So was Hulk Hogan, never left his side then when Mr. T was
Pretty
around?
much, yeah. Yeah, they didn't want somebody, hey, pull him in on the side. But, hey, or, somebody, a Dr. D kind of triggering, going down. Hey, Mr. N-word, this and that, oh boy, that would have been something,
a PR disaster.
And they had, Vince, Vince wouldn't have fired you. I think he would have shot you. He would have taken a hit. I mean, he was leveraged up to the balls with like I said, it was the first time. He had some boxing. It's other things were pay-per-view, but it wasn't. It was a brand new world for everybody. It took 40 years, give or take 40 years ago. So it wasn't. He'd have that. WrestleMania was big, I guess. I don't know what type of financial hit they had off of that. And some people tell you one thing, another camp will tell you something else.
I've heard with WrestleMania 1, he mostly either broke even or made a small profit. It wasn't like the financial mega success. I mean, maybe it might have been like an artistic success.
All those stars, Joan Rivers, Liberace, Aretha Franklin, they didn't come cheap.
No, it wasn't a charity gig for them, I'm sure. Just going back to Mr. T once more, couldn't Piper have just refused to work with Mr. T, or secretly did Piper know that this was good for him?
Yeah. Cost him big bucks. I mean, that would have been his end. I doubt, somebody might have picked him up later. But, he would have been out of, he couldn't refuse. Even Orndorff was dropped in the fall in the first WrestleMania. He ended up first match with me in the next one, but he was like I said, they're stringing me along. Well, in case this happens, you can go. Well, that was a big hand job, but it was just whatever, But you realize that there's too much invested time and money and man hours and everything else that you couldn't. You had to play ball,
Yeah.
So absolutely. Even putting T over, he wasn't going to knock T out. I mean, that's for damn sure.
Well,
he could have, probably could have if he wanted to, but that's a different. That's a whole other ballgame.
Do you think it was also a bit interesting that Mr. T, I mean, he was huge in the A-team, I mean, physically, imposing, but in the wrestling ring, he was actually quite undersized for the WWF in the mid-80s.
He wasn't a real big guy. Right at 200 pounds, maybe 210 tops. Was in pretty good shape, but they weren't ripped like they are nowadays, diets and the workouts and stuff.
Yeah, I just find it weird. I just find it weird that he's just in real life a massive dude. In the WWF world, he was undersized.
Well, it's movie stars, right?
Yeah. All you need to be in the movies is a big head, apparently, because it looks like you can't have a small head on screen. Apparently,
they'll put you on a box, make you stand on a box.
Stand on
bigger than you.
The old Tom Cruise box. Right, okay, we're going to watch. I don't know how much we're going to watch. Very little of it. Probably just like the last round and a half of the Roddy Piper Mr. T match. So once again, do bear with me. Okay, we'll give it a few minutes. There we go, between rounds.
Joe Frazier.
Was it you who said that they met Joe Frazier and he was just like punch drunk? Or was that
No,
somebody
it wasn't
else?
me, but yeah, he was.
Oh, so you did like briefly interact with him. You could just tell he wasn't all there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a little, handshake, how are you? Smoking Joes. Blah, blah, blah. And then they whisk everybody off.
Oh, God, we're in round 2. We've got a few more rounds. Anyway, we can talk over it. And if it gets really boring, we'll just carry on. I remember, I think I've watched this once. I don't remember thinking this was one of the worst matches of all time. I remember not thinking it wasn't good. But I didn't think it deserved -5 stars.
What the hell is that referee's name?
Oh, you're gonna stump me on that one now.
I don't want to know. That's all right. We met him early. Jack something. And he was trying. He got booked in different territories a couple times.
Oh, did I say Jack?
He was on a trip. So
it was like Jack Conley or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Oh right, so he was a boxing referee though, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, no, he wrestled. He's a New York referee.
Oh,
New York
right.
State.
Oh, so would he just do anything then, basically, or?
Probably.
Oh,
He worked the matches, and he probably, I think he did a lot of boxing. They had New York State had tons of boxing before.
now, something I've read that I didn't know about, apparently, I don't know if Roddy said this in an interview years ago, but I read it, was instead of having his hands taped, holding them open, his hands were taped closed, which is not the done thing in boxing. Supposedly, the theory was that with his hands taped closed, he couldn't stretch them out in the gloves, and therefore there would be more padding, more air in between, basically Mr. T's face and Roddy's fists, in case he went into business for himself or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
So you alluded to this before. Oh, well, there you go, knockdown. Terrible boxing management. You should step over to the corner and let the referee count 10.
Maybe it's WrestleMania.
Yeah, sorry, you alluded to this before. Do you remember when? So Roddy Piper did actually disappear and train. And he went into a boxing training camp for this match.
Yeah. Yeah, with Lou Duva.
So that was legitimate then. He actually did disappear for a few weeks.
Oh yeah. Well, Piper used to do. He would load up. He'd study for all the things he did. He was going to spend a lot of time. Like he did. I guess he got legitimate boxing shape and stuff. And I guess he used to box.
I think there was a Roddy chant there before as well. In the
what chant?
A Roddy Piper. I don't know if it's Roddy or Piper. I don't think they were chanting T.
Oh, I don't know.
That's the problem with having a one-syllable name. You can't really chant it. Unless they chanted Mr. Mr. Mr.
T.
Did you stick around to watch this in the back?
I'm parts of it. I don't think I was really into it by that time.
No, were you already in the hotel bar by now?
I went back home, but yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It was the
So you
afternoon
live
show.
in New Jersey.
Yeah, it was afternoon for us. As they went, it started. Gosh, I don't know if we were delayed in or not. I don't know if we actually came on live. But they had to go all the way to time change, 3-hour difference to the West Coast from the East. So they had to follow the time change.
Of course, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so I guess we started in the evening earlier. Because I was ribbing Fuji. I got the limo. And we got, I left, we got to leave. We got to be there early, because he's always rushing. I got, I threw myself in the grenade. I got there 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And actually Vince was pleased to see it because they were setting everything up and stuff. So, actually, it wasn't really a rib. Backfired. I called most of his ribs on me. They all backfired.
With Roddy Piper, he's made mention many times that it was like Golden Gloves. What is Golden Gloves?
An amateur boxing. Like Olympic. Pre-Olympic style boxing.
Yeah, with the head
with
the headgear and stuff.
Usually, yeah. Olympic, the amounts of contacts, different rules, you don't.
Yeah. Was it like more like point system?
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. No, you're still getting all the, all the skills and stuff. Like amateurs coming out of the amateur ranks, they go through the Golden Gloves.
Oh, there it is. Now, that big punch there, Roddy has made mention before, has been very upset with it because Mr. T missed by quite a distance. You can't tell on that camera angle, actually. But Mr. T completely missed, and Piper was really upset with it because he said, "I'd rather you knock my head off than give me a popcorn punch."
Yeah.
How tough was Roddy? Sorry, carry on. No, carry on, please. Did it make you lose your train of thought then?
No. He wasn't out to hurt him, man. I don't know if he was. Doesn't even look like he's really in shape here.
No, 3 rounds.
But they worked out together. They trained. They got together way before this. It was like LT and Bam Bam and all those guys, all those celebrities and stuff that took part of
All right, so behind closed doors they worked this match out.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you mean, man?
They weren't going to. They weren't going. They got a box girl, ring girl.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear. I don't know why I'm surprised to hear that they worked this match out beforehand. I just imagine that they just like threw him in and just said, right, don't kill each other, and then you go down in this round, I'll go down in this round. And...
No. No, T's group wouldn't have that. Mr. T's group wouldn't be going for that.
Do you know where they practiced? Was it just on the road or?
Probably Tony Altomore's. Tony up in Connecticut. All these guys had ring. Kowalski maybe. Probably Tony Altomore had a ring around Connecticut there before before they had the schools and all the gyms and stuff they had. It was real rudiment. Really start up. They had an office in Stanford, but it's not the big building, big complex it is now. Or they got a Gold's Gym, World Gym underneath at the bottom. I've never been there. I heard it's fabulous now.
Did Roddy? I almost think it's like Macho Man Randy Savage. They both seem to have big reputations for being, real tough guys, not people not to tangle with. Yet I don't really know any stories about them fighting. Did Roddy just have the reputation, or did he actually, fight drunks in bars quite regularly and other wrestlers?
No, just him and Snuka. I know him and Snuka didn't get along. But I never saw it. Just according to him, he says, "God, you got along." He and Jimmy, for some reason, Well, Hulk was there. And I read. Well, we'll cover that later about Jimmy.
Yeah, that'll be in the
Jimmy
next
Heel.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. I'll stop that. Whoops. There we go. Now, where are you? There you are. I don't think it's that bad, that match. I mean, there's a couple of soft-looking punches there, but apart from that, it seemed entertaining
it wasn't
enough.
Great, but it's like I said, about the best the best tag teams, the best. You build your own story up in your own territory. That WWE WWF was taking it all over the world at the time, all over the country, all over North America at the time. So that's how people became such household names, because it's saturation of television. It's like anything else, but before that, you're in your territories and stuff. So the matches you saw and the championships and the stuff that you thought was great, it probably was, but it doesn't get the accolades that all the stuff that they laid down after, Page, Steamboat, and Macho Man, 89 pages or something? I don't know, something.
Well,
incredible.
Probably like 89 moves, yeah. 89.
Oh, 89 points, yeah.
Unless he had very big handwriting.
Yeah.
I'll ask you this one last thing and then we'll shut down this podcast. Is Roddy Piper promptly disappears from the WWF 4 months after this. Do you know why?
Not off the top of my head, but I would just say movies. He was they were 1 year into Cyndi Lauper and David Wolf and all those things, and he was telling me what would it be like if I came out with I was having an affair with Cyndi Lauper, some movie star, and he was eating the apple, He took a bite and he was just eating steak, enjoying it. And that's what, and that's where he went afterwards. So I would guess if he was MIA for 4 or 5 months, he was, because he used to have the Disney people around, and Andy Kaufman, and a lot of, he was the guy that did a lot of bridging over with movie stars and stuff.
Disney people. What do you mean, Disney people?
There were 2-3 guys that were in production with the Disney company, and who they were or what they were doing, I don't know, but I know, I was introduced to him once or twice, or so. Around a couple of times. So he was kind of romancing them, and they probably had Disney parts and stuff, and he was looking for parts. I would guess, I don't know anything as a fact, but I know he had that he was bit by the Hollywood tsetse fly.
Yeah.
And he was enamored by the whole Hollywood. So if he disappeared, that's where he went.
Yeah. I don't think this is when he filmed They Lived. That was after WrestleMania 3 next year. But I can't remember when. Was it Tag Team, that series? And it was like him, and for some reason like Samu was in it or something. Maybe he went off to film a pilot for that. I don't know.
Could be. He was, like I say, he was in the movies, and whether they were released or anything, you don't know either. That the things that happened. Samu could have been. Where was Sam? He was pretty young at the time, huh? Like the Samoans hadn't even come back in yet, had they?
Oh, the Samoans. One of the Samoans went as a single.
Alpha and
Sika came in as a single, and he was managed by the Wizard, aka. I've barely had any sleep. I can't remember his name. King Curtis.
I remember they were tagging. They were as a tag for a while. I remember when the Roman Reigns was born. We were at TV, and Sika's walking us. Oh God, my wife gave birth last night. It would have to be because it's just about that right time, the timing on that. I didn't get a caller or something on the road. I'm pretty sure that's when the knee was born.
I'm just looking up now. So tag teams in 1991. So I was wrong on that. But for God's sake, they always give me pop-up ads. I'm looking at Roddy Piper's extensive IMDb. 87 Body Slam. Quick Rick Roberts. He probably went off to film Body Slam. In Roddy Piper's own biography, he says he just needed to go and recharge his batteries, and obviously he probably found a bit of work extra while he was out there, while he was schmoozing Hollywood execs and everything. Do you think there was any fallout with Vince over him leaving? Did you hear anything about that?
Could be. I didn't hear about it, but yeah. Where, Vince wants you, you're mine. He owns you. He thinks, and Roddy was in and out, making, he made waves, but he got away with it. He was always, stand-upish for WWF and wrestling. So he never really burnt the bridge, but he did stuff his own way without burning any bridges. But he wasn't, he was so, his personality, his character was so domineering that, you kind of had to go with it because he was going to be, whatever, he was going to be whatever he wanted to do. Because it was going to get, he was like, you talk about him, wanting to be bigger. Well, if he was a big muscular guy, I doubt it would have worked. The whole thing, as fit as well with, the tie and the coat and the kilts and all that stuff as well. If he'd have been, really a big, broad-shouldered, muscular guy. Hello, dear.
Hello.
Say hello to Jay.
Hello. From that, I'm going to shut down the pod. I saw a hand wave then. Hello. From that, I'm going to shut down this podcast, and thank you for your time, and I'm going to go have some breakfast, and then we're going to do the second one. But for now, we'll do the plugs once again, and, books behind me, The Rock and Owen Hart, on Amazon, etc. DonMuraco.com for all your signed merchandise. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the show as well. I never forget that. I'll just flub my lines, but I remember things. How could I forget it? Anyway, right, there you go. So that's the podcast over with. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you, Don, for entertaining us once again.
Aloha.